Everybody, welcome again to this is the third episode in this monthly series that we present as at the Indus Forum. So it's defeat the hackers and how to run your SAP landscape securely. Right. So, as Mukesh mentioned, it's important. Security is really important today for your IT infrastructure. As we move more towards security, the importance for security, as we move more towards technology, the importance for security only grows along with it. So, in this session or in this series of sessions, we hope to talk more to you about what we do at SAP um, to keep you more secure and how you can better secure your already existing SAP infrastructure. So, my name is Rohit Nambiar, and in the first session, we already gave a brief about what we as part of our team does. I've got my colleagues Selvaraj and Bibin and Chandan, who will be also helping out with the session today. Let's move on to the agenda. Give me a second. Okay, right. So for those of you who have attended previous sessions, you know how the agenda goes. The first section is generic, and it'll be moving into a little bit about um, an introduction into SAP security and how does hacking on SAP systems work. So it's going to be a very short segment, and this month the agenda looks like this. We've got a guest speaker who's Chandan, and he'll be talking about how we calculate severity of SAP security nodes. So in the last session, I showed you a little bit about security nodes, and one of the sections in that was the CVSS, which is basically a score we use to rank the severity of a vulnerability. Now, that itself is an art which Chandan will be showing us. That's the second segment. And now, depending upon how long that session takes, we'll also have the third section, which is how to devise a patching strategy for your business so that every month you can efficiently tackle the security notes that are released by us. Right. And as always, feedback is welcome. If you have suggestions on what we can do for the next few webinars, that's next month and the months after that, then you can always send that in. Feedback about this session or any of the previous sessions are always welcome. At the end, you will find our contact information so you can get in touch with us for any other issues, yeah, or suggestions. So with that, let's start. Okay, so if you've attended this seminar before, you know what's coming next. But for those of you who don't, let's move into. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about security in general, there are a lot of hacks that happen on daily. You might read it in the news. You might see it in all kinds of whatever IT forum that you have. You can see hacks on various different companies on a daily basis, information being leaked, sensitive customer information, all kinds of financial data, all things that are put onto IT systems today are vulnerable or are susceptible to being leaked or being hacked. I won't go into many of the major hacks that are happening today, but let's talk a little bit more about SAP. So, how easy is it really to hack into an unpatched SAP system, right? Uh, what I'm showing you here is a screenshot of a public repository, right? This is nothing special or secret to only some hackers, but everybody has access to this. It's essentially a page or a website which hosts exploits being ways to hack into systems, different kinds of systems. And what I want you here to notice is that you've got all kinds of exploits on different SAP products. You've got business objects, NetWeaver, and all those. And on the left-hand side, what you can see highlighted in the red box is a tiny download button. So these are what you would call plug and play exploits. You can easily look for a particular system. If I want to attack a business object system or maybe the Sybase or NetWeaver, or anybody for that matter can come onto this public facing website and look for exploits which just need a simple download button, and they're just essentially scripts. In some cases they're ASP scripts, they're Python scripts, PHP scripts, whatever they are, but they are written with the intention to exploit vulnerabilities. So any technically competent user will be able to come here, download an exploit, and potentially hack any unpatched SAP system. So That's the bad news. But the good news is that these are all known issues with available fixes. What do I mean by that? These are all targeting vulnerabilities which have already been reported and in the past and have already been fixed from SAP's side. So we fix vulnerabilities that are reported to them and release them in the form of security notes, which are then consumed by consumers in order for them to stay secure. So all of these issues that you see here or on any of these public facing websites would be known issues probably from many years ago, which have exploits written for them and are now being published. Yeah. So so yes, the point was that these are all known issues, available fixes, but for those you have to actually apply the fixes in order to be secure against these vulnerabilities. Now, I did mention that you have to be technically competent in order to exploit these vulnerabilities, right? To download and use them. But that's not all. Today, it's become so easy that the hacking community has become so big and that they've actually created frameworks that allow you to automate the process of hacking. So using these frameworks, which will allow you to end-to-end hack a system, from looking for vulnerabilities to exploiting them to persisting on a system to even exfiltrating business data from a particular system, you have everything automated. So that means that even somebody who's not so technically competent can also exploit these vulnerabilities. Here, what I'm showing you here, don't be intimidated by the black screen. I'll highlight some things which you can look at. But this essentially is a framework which is publicly accessible, and it relies upon the repository which I showed you in the last slide, which has a series of exploits on vulnerabilities on different products, not just SAP, but you do find SAP there as well. So this framework here essentially pulls from that previous slide's database and allows you or provides you sort of a framework within which you can exploit these vulnerabilities. So a few things that you might want to notice is that here on top you see that this is a remote code execution, which is a very serious vulnerability which can be exploited here in the SAP config servlet, which, if I'm not wrong, is part of the NetWeaver suite. Another thing to notice is that, like I mentioned, known issues with available fixes. This is something that was disclosed all the way back in 2012. But if you have not patched your systems, then you are very well susceptible to this. And what I'm showing you now is how easy it is to get hacked when you don't patch your systems, right? You simply, with the help of this framework, you simply enter the target host, that is the IP address on which this particular config servlet is running on. And then all it takes is the simple hit of an enter button on the word exploit, and the framework takes care of everything after that. So easy ways to exploit vulnerabilities that are known, but that's the catch again, that these are known issues. All of these are known issues. And if you don't patch your systems, you can see how, number one, how easily available such vulnerability and exploit information is, and number two, how easy it is to actually run it and exploit your systems. So moral of the story, patch your systems. The SAP, we have security nodes which provide fixes for all the vulnerabilities that are found. We've got it's good to also go with your regular SP upgrade cycle, and that along with, so if you have a regular SP upgrade cycle along with a strong patching strategy on how to apply our security nodes, I think you can pretty much be mitigated against all of these. Know that majority of the attacks that happen today happen because of exploiting known vulnerabilities. What you see in the news are probably vulnerabilities that have been known in the past, exploited, and because of which the company has lost or incurred millions of expenses or charges. So step one to being secure on your landscape is to actually have an efficient and regular patch strategy and keeping your systems up to date, um, not only your SAP systems, but any systems, but SAP in specific for this session. And that's what this monthly webinar hopes to show you more information about. So one more thing which I want to quickly touch upon before we hand over to Chandan, our guest speaker for this session, is that as of June 11th, that is, as I've iterated in the past few sessions, that our SAP security patch days, or the days on which we release security notes to the public, is the second Tuesday of every month. As of the June patch day, which fell on June 11th this time, all the new SAP security notes of high priority or very high priority, that is CVSS 7.0 and above. If you don't understand that, you will in the next segment from Chandan. But for those of you who do know that from June 11th onwards, all of those security nodes with a high or hot news level priority will deliver fixes in support packages shipped within the last 24 months. Um, this is just an FYI because before this, it was the coverage period was 18 months. As of June 11th onwards, with all security notes released after that, for priorities high and very high, we will be supporting SPs shipped within the last 24 months. So to help this is something to help you cope up with your patching strategy, and something to be taken into consideration if you already do have a patching strategy in mind, because now it means that you have a little bit more time to apply your patches and to get support even to the slightly older support packages shipped. So that's the information there. These slides will be shared with you. So if you want more information about this, you can click on the link that's mentioned below. Alternatively, you can always reach out to us. Our contact information is at the end of the slides, and we can always help you out with that. Without further ado, I want to switch over to the next segment of the day. So like I mentioned, we have our guest speaker Chandan today with us. Probably he'll give an introduction in a bit. To give you a little brief, the the CVSS section of our security notes are a very important section, and helps you. The intention of it is to help you understand the impact, or more like the severity of a particular vulnerability for which we release security notes. Now, we do this with the help of CVSS, which is a complete art in itself. We've been doing it for many years, and I can tell you that it is something which needs its own session, which is why we're having it here today, because we want you as customers to better understand how we rate the severity of our vulnerabilities. So tomorrow when you're doing your assessment, it becomes a lot clearer to you why the scores that we have given actually apply to the vulnerability at hand. So with that, I will stop sharing and I will hand over to Chandan. Yeah.
Thanks, Rohit. Just give me a minute. I will share my screen. Okay, so good morning, people. My name is Chandan. I'm working in SAP Security team from 2010, and I'm currently the CVSS evangelist for Security Response team. I would like to take this opportunity to share my knowledge with respect to the CVSS scoring system with the session calculating severity for SAP Security Nodes. So okay, so the agenda for my session is like, first I'll be giving some introduction on CVSS, like what is CVSS, and I'll be sharing the background of CVSS, who is responsible for that, and I'll be explaining different vectors of this scoring system and why CVSS should be used. So after that, I'll be calculating the CVSS score for a couple of nodes which was released in recent past, and I will be explaining the reasons why we have rated like that. And next, I'll be sharing some resources URL with you people, where if you are interested, you can learn more, dig deeper, and also you can get certification on this CVSS topic, which will help you to prioritize your security nodes. And then finally, you can give feedback on this session. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can stop me and you can ask me, or we can have this Q&A session at the end also. Okay, so.
And also just a quick note that you have a question answer box at the bottom, which you can access. And if you don't want to interrupt Chandan during presenting, feel free to ask questions into that box, and the rest of us here will help you out. Yeah.
Thanks, Rohit. So what is CVSS? Let me read out the definition which is there in the fast.org website. This the CVSS stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. It provides a way to capture the principal characteristics of a vulnerability and produce a numerical score reflecting the severity as well as the textual representation of that score. The numerical score can then be translated into a qualitative representation such as low, medium, high, and critical to help organizations properly assess and prioritize their vulnerability management process. So this CVSS scoring system has been introduced by or developed by First.org. It's a non-profit organization which is based in US. The main mission of this organization is to provide support for the software companies which encounter computer security incidents and to help their response team. So this CVSS gives us the severity of a security issue, which is reported on a software product or a operating system or on the database. So it can be used for all these things, and it can be represented in a textual form also. So when I say the CVSS score, it will be number which is like 5.5 or 6.5 or 7.8, and CVSS also provides a way to qualitatively represent that, like low, medium, high, and critical. So the calculator helps us to generate the score, and this system helps us to bifurcate that score into low, medium, or high. And as you see in the bottom of the screen, we have the textual representation of the CVSS score, which is vector colon. It's AVNACL PRL. So this is the textual representation of the vectors which are used to derive the severity score of a particular security vulnerability. In the next slide, I'm going to explain these things in details. So moving on to the next slide. So based on the rating, CVSS score, how we are rating the security incident is like if the CVSS score is between 9 and 10, we'll rate it as critical or hot news or very high issue. If the CVSS score is between 7 and 8.9, it is considered as a high severity issue. If the CVSS score is 4.0 to 6.9, it is considered as medium, and anywhere between zero point 0.1 to 3.9, it is considered as low. If the CVSS score is 0, then it's not a security issue at all. So this is how we convert CVSS score into the qualitative system. Explaining CVSS 3 in detail. So CVSS 3 has three metric groups. The first one is called base metric group. The second one is temporal metric groups, and the third one is environmental metric group. So the base metric group is mandatory, and as per first.org, temporal metric group and environmental metric group is optional. So in SAP, we use just base metric group to derive the severity of an security incident and not the other two. The reason for this is the temporal metric group remains same in all the scenarios. The exploit code maturity will be always proof of concept for us. So the white hat hackers or researcher who reports any issues to SAP, they submit only the POC. And the remediation level vector will be always official patch from SAP, and report confidence is again it's from the researcher. So all these 3 points remain same for all the scenarios. Hence, it will have same impact with the base metric score. So that's why we are not considering that. And also, environmental metric group vector value depends on the customers or the end users production environment setup, which is not same with all, and we as a SAP employees won't be knowing how each customer has configured his production environment. Because of this reason, we are not considering the environmental metric group also. So we'll be considering only the base metric group. And in the next slide, I'm going to explain this base metric group in detail. So the base metric group has totally 8 vectors. It has been divided into 2 segments. On the left hand side, we can see one segment which has got 4 vectors. These 4 vectors are related to the vulnerable component. On the right hand side, vectors are related to the impacted component. So whenever we are calculating or arriving it to a value for this left side vector, we should always think about the vulnerable component. And whenever we are arriving it to a vector of the right hand side, we should think about the impacted component. Let's go one by one. The first vector is attack vector. So this uh, point or this vector is used to define the means or way of attack can be done on the system. So this has 4 values like a network, adjacent, local, and physical. If if a particular attack can be done via internet, then in that case the attack vector will be considered as network. And in a particular attack scenario, if the attacker has to have a physical access of the system, then in that case the attack vector is considered as physical. So if the attack vector is a network, the CVSS score will be higher, and it will reduce if you move towards the innermost circle. So the outermost circle is network, and the next one is adjacent, and the next is local, and the innermost circle is physical. The next vector which you are talking is attack complexity. Attack complexity defines how easy or difficult to perform that attack. Like if a attack step can be written in a blog and give it to someone else, and any other person can perform the same attack and gets the same result, then we consider attack complexity as low. If attack complexity of step 1, if the attack step 1 leads to multiple results, and based on one combination the second step will be decided. So in that case attack complexity is considered as high. Like the outcome of step 1 is not fixed, and based on the outcome of step 1 the step 2 will be decided, where these things cannot be written down and given it to a person and he can execute the same steps. Also the outcome of the step 1 may not be in the control of the attacker. So attacker if attacker doesn't have entire control on the attack scenario or the attack result, then we'll consider attack complexity as high. The third vector which we are talking is about privilege required. This vector speaks about the privilege what the attacker should have to perform the attack. So this vector has 3 values, which is none, low, and high. So to perform an attack, if the attacker doesn't need any privilege, then we will rate this vectors as vector as none. And if the attacker needs a regular user privilege, we will rate it as low. And if the attacker requires a high privilege to perform this attack, then we will rate it as high. A typical example for this is like if there is a leave management system, and I as a team member can create a ticket for requesting a leave. So, and due to the vulnerability in the system, I can also create a leave request for my colleague. So in this case, it's if attacker wants to exploit this, he should at least have a normal user privilege to log into the system and then create the leave request. Assume I am the manager and I can approve the leave request of my team members, but because of the vulnerability in the system, I can also approve leave request of other team members. So in this case, the attacker should have management role access to the system to approve the leave request. So in this case, privilege required is considered as I. So even for this privilege required vector, the CVSS score decreases as we go from left to right. Like the privilege required none will lead to a high severity score compared to privilege required is low and high. The fourth vector which we are discussing here is the user interaction. This vector speaks about whether user interaction is required when the attack is in progress. Like when attacker performs the attack, does the victim or some other legitimate user has to do some action to complete the attack? If the answer is yes, then we mark this vector as required. If not, we'll mark it as a none. So in a typical case, if I upload a file to a server and some other user has to run that file to make sure the exploit happens, then in that case the user interaction is required. Coming on to the right hand side where the score relative is to the impacted component, the first vector is called scope. Scope is a vector where it decides the impacted component and the affected components are same or different. For example, in a scenario, component A has the vulnerability, but if an attacker exploits that vulnerability in component A, will affect component B. In this case, we can define that the scope is changed, and the scope and the vector value of this can be marked it as changed. So. um In this case, scope unchanged has lower score impact with respect to CVSS, and scope changed will have higher score impact with respect to the CVSS score. The last three in the right hand side is the CIA vectors. The CIA is considered as the three pillars of cyber security, which defines confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If an attacker can read the complete data, then we will mark confidentiality vector as high. If attacker can read or disclose a partial data, then this will be considered as low. If attacker cannot see any data or disclose any data, then we will mark this confidentiality as none. Assume during an attack, the end results displays or discloses the passwords of admin users, or it, the credit card number or social security numbers are disclosed. Then in those scenarios, confidentiality is considered as high. Similarly, with integrity, if if a small set of data can be altered using this vector, then the integrity will be rated as low. If the entire data set is getting affected, then the integrity will be marked as high. If there is no loss of data, then it will be considered as none. Uh, the third vector is availability. Confidentiality and integrity speaks about the data, but the availability vector speaks about the system. Like due to the exploitation of the vulnerability present in the system, if the entire system is unavailable for all the users, then we will rate this availability vector as high. If the systems is partially down, like if the system's partial functionality is not available to the all user, or if the system is partially not available to some user, then we consider availability as low. If the attack doesn't have any impact on the availability, then this vector will be rated as none. So uh, as as a customer, I would recommend you to concentrate on the right hand side, because it speaks about impacted component. So majority of the customers will have their own set of priorities like a few customers may implement the node whose confidentiality impact is high, and a few might give priority to the security node where integrity is very high. So I would request you to go through these features in the note and come up with a plan or a priority list and implement the security note accordingly. So this is about the CVSS vectors detail. Moving on to the next slide, why we need CVSS. So till now we have learned what is CVSS kind of thing. So the next one speaks about the reasons why we are using it. So many of you are all of you know that we measure distance in kilometers in India and miles in some other countries. So we need a metric to measure something, and CVSS is one of them. So, that is one reason why we are using CVSS, and then why we are using only CVSS in this case. So, the CVSS will act as a common language between researcher, software vendor, and the customer. So, as I mentioned in the previous example, if I am talking in kilometers and the customer is talking in miles, there will be definitely confusion between the vendor and the customer. To avoid this, we are using CVS as a one standard metric where we use CVSS to communicate the severity of the security incident. And the third use of CVSS is based on the CVSS, we are deriving with the priority of the security node. So we can easily decide whether it is a high prio or a medium prio or a low prio incident based on the CVSS. So and the last one is rewards. It's even though it's last, but it's not least. So majority of the bug bounty programs, the bounty amount will be decided based on the priority or the severity of the issue. So if I am the bounty hunter, I would like to write rate every incident as very high, and if I am the developer, I would like to rate every incident as low. So this CVSS system provides a common ground for both a researcher and the vendors to discuss and arrive to a common rating for a reported security incident. So because of all this reason, we are using CVSS in SAP. So moving on to the next slide, I would like to give a hands-on on the CVSS calculator thing. So let me open this. So if you have an option or chance to open this calculator, you are also welcome to open this in your system, and we can do the hands-on together.
Alternatively, you can also just, if you're not able to see the link exactly, you can Google for first CVSS calculator and you'll get the same link that Chandan's showing you right now. And we encourage you to do this along with us because we'll explain a particular security scenario and you can try out yourself. This is a very user-friendly calculator, and along with Chandan, you can do the rating, and this will help you understand our security notes better in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rohit. So if you can see my screen, this is the CVSS calculator. So I'm just trying to play around with the vector values, and I would want you to notice the score change in the right hand top corner. Uh, so let me select a few values randomly and see how the calculator works. So as soon as I click this thing, the score and the priority will be calculated in the CVSS calculator. If you can see in the right hand top corner, you can see the score. So if I just change any vector values, accordingly the CVSS scores will be changed. So uh, uh, this site has a information how this calculator works exactly in the backend, but I'm not going to discuss about that. So So this is the link for the first .org CVSS calculator. I would like to consider a couple of notes which were released in the recent PA and explain you how we have arrived to the CVSS score for that note. So I'm talking about security note 2638175, which deals with the reflected cross-site scripting in SAP business objects. So the vulnerability description for this note is um, SAP business object model is reflecting a requested parameter XXX into response content without sanitization. This could be used by an attacker to build a special URL that execute custom JavaScript code when the URL is accessed. And the impact of this vulnerability is by exploiting this vulnerability, an unauthenticated attacker could trick an already authenticated user into executing arbitrary JavaScript code. So, if you carefully see this thing, you will come to know many details about the CVSS vector. So, in this case, the network attack vector is rated as network because attacker can perform this attack via network, and the attack complexity is low because anyone can perform this attack. So the person who is crafting the malicious JavaScript is the person who has to think a lot. But if he shares the code with anyone, anyone can replicate the attack scenario easily. So because of that, we are rating the attack complexity as low. Parallelly, what I would like to do is I would like to uh, mark the score in the CVSS calculator and see how exactly the CVSS score is calculated for this scenario. And the third vector is privilege required. So if you see in the impact, it clearly mentioned that an unauthenticated attacker. So attacker doesn't need any privileges to perform this attack. So because of this, we are rating privilege required to none. And the next parameter is user interaction. This we have to mark as required because the victim has to click on the link to make sure uh, the malicious link, malicious script gets executed. So I'm going to mark this as required here. Moving on to the next vector is scope. The scope is changed here because the bug is in the application, but the vulnerable JavaScript will be executed on the client's browser. So the impacted component is browser here. Because of this, the scope is unchanged. And moving on to the confidentiality and integrity impact, these JavaScript can display few confidentiality data from the browser, and it can alter a low confidentiality data from the client side. Because of that, we are marking this confidentiality as low and the integrity as low. And with this attack, there is no impact to the availability of the system. So the system available will be 100% even after this attack is performed. Because of this, we are marking availability of none. So with this scoring thing, we arrive to a score of 6.1, and the priority of this issue is medium. So this is about note 2638175. In the first slide, I had showed that it can be mentioned in a textual format. If you see here, so the same thing what we have calculated can be represented in this vector format. So I have one more example here. For this, I'm taking uh, second note as 2764283, which talks about XXE in SAP HANA Extended Application Services Advanced. So in this, the SAP HANA Extended Application Services Advanced does not sufficiently validate an XML document accepted from an unauthenticated developer with privilege to SAP space. The impact is the attacker will be able to send a specifically crafted XML payload, allowing him to read any file of the OS with permission SID and perform a DOS on the platform. So if you clearly go through the vulnerability description and impact, it is clear that attacker can perform this attack via network. So because of that, let us read the attack vector as network here, and the attack complexity is low because you, if I get this a pre-configured XML, I just have to make it as a payload and upload it so that it will get executed and I can perform the attack. So in this case, the attack complexity is low. If you see here, only the authenticated developer privilege to the SAP space can upload this XML file, and not everyone will have this privilege. Because of this point, we will mark privilege required as high in this case. And once the attacker upload this payload, there is no interaction required from the victim. Because of this, we'll mark user interaction as none here. And with respect to the scope vector, the scope is changed here because the SAP HANA Extended Application Services Advanced as the vulnerability here, but the OS is getting impacted. Because of this, we'll mark scope as changed. And since the attacker can read any file on the OS, where even he can read etc/password file or any other important file. Because of this, I'm marking confidentiality as high here. And with this XSE thing, the attacker can perform only read-only attacks on the system. Not he cannot modify any data. Because of this, the integrity I'll be rating it as none. And the attacker also perform denial of service on the platform. Because of this, I'm rating availability as high. So with this, the severity of this incident will become high with the CVS score of 8.7. So this is how SAP calculates the severity and the CVS score of security incident. So if you have any particular note in mind to know how SAP has rated the CVS score, you can let us know. We can try take that as an example and show you. Or you can also contact us after this session. We'll try to answer your question on that particular note. So the next slide talks about the useful links, where if you are interested in this topic, you can dig deep. So these are all the links from first.org. So there is a user guide and example document, and there is a guide on telling how to use the CSS calculator and all. The interesting link is the last one, where the first.org offers a certification course. So it's close to 2.5 hours course, and at the end of successful completion of that course, they provide a certification on this CVSS also. So this is about the CVSS and how SAP calculates its severity for the security incidents.
Okay, thanks, Chandan. In the meanwhile, if there are any questions, you can feel free to unmute your mic and ask now if you have any questions about any certain vectors or about the examples that Chandan had given. I had posted the links of each of the notes which Chandan was doing the review for in the chat box. So you can refer to that. And if you have any doubts, you can ask Chandan right now or the Q&A box, or you can reach out to us later on, however it may be. So we'll give you a few seconds. If anybody wants to unmute their mic and ask any questions regarding CVSS, feel free. Okay. If not, then thank you, Chandan. I'll just share my screen once again.
Thanks, Rohit.
Yep. Okay. So that was a brief session on CVSS and how SAP uses it to rate severity of our security notes. Now, by now you should have at least a vague idea. Like I said, CVSS is a topic in itself, and we've been doing it for years. And there's always more things to learn, and each vulnerability is different. So it's a challenging topic, and why it's important for you as customers is because with each note that comes out, for many reasons, the note text or the security note will not give you everything that you need to know about a vulnerability, because as much as in the interests of us securing you by providing the fix, we also don't want to give away too much. So we try to give you enough in order to do your own security assessment, and understanding the CVSS of a note is one of the most important aspects when you are assessing the impact that a particular vulnerability might have within your business landscape. So for that reason, we felt that having a CVSS session was really important. It could be a lot of information to take in, but the resources that Chandan's given, as well as the session, should be a great starting point for you all. And in the future, if you have more doubts, you can always reach out to us. So it looks like it's already 11:50, so we have just about 10 minutes left for this session. If you remember the agenda, it did mention that if we had time, we would move on to the third section, which was to patch or not to patch. That is how you can devise a patching strategy for your business. But 10 minutes is way too less a time to cover that in. So we'll shift that on to the later sessions. Like I said, this is a monthly seminar, or a monthly webinar. It's going to happen once every month. And if you do have topic suggestions, then you can give them in. For now, I think we can close this topic only with this topic of CVSS, or calculating the severity. Maybe I can just give you in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I can give you a quick brief about that third section of what we would have gone into if we had the time. I would say you need at least 20 minutes in order to cover the third topic, which is why we're not doing it this time. But to give you a short introduction of it, now every month we release security notes, and you can see with the first section of this presentation that if you don't patch the systems, then there's a lot of problems, or there are a lot of consequences that might come about from it. And so having a clear patching strategy is very important. And when I say patching strategy, it means from upgrading, having a regular SP upgrade cycle, to also having a plan on how to tackle security notes each and every month that they come in, right? um, okay. We have in the chat some people asking us to continue. Okay, so would you be okay if we have 10 minutes? Maybe I can cover a couple of slides and then pick up from the next session. Is that okay? It'll be a little bit broken, but if that's okay, then I can carry on. Okay, fine. Then I will, give me a second. I had hidden those slides. Let me go ahead and unhide them, because I was pretty sure we might not get time with CVSS, but um, okay, then I will quickly go through some slides and then we can. Okay, so security patching processes out of public demand. We shall go through a few of these slides. Okay, now when you look at a security note, there is always a question of security versus business. Now, we know that upgrading a security note is not, or applying fixes in anything functional or security is not easy, and that there is a significant business impact that might come about when, or at least business impacts that you have to take into consideration when applying security notes or upgrading into SPs. So the question is, to patch or not to patch. In what situation do you weigh, or how exactly? What's the most efficient way to weigh your business against the security aspects when it comes to security notes? I'm here focusing completely on security notes, so that's what this segment will be about. Okay. So when it comes to the patching process, right? What kind of actions do you take? Okay, so I feel like I've been using this word patching process, but I've not explained it enough. Um, Essentially, what I'm going to help you do is come up with sort of guidelines or rules or a process that you can follow within your business to tackle security notes. And every month, say you see a security note, once you have this rule book or this little guideline that I'm going to help you create, you can just take a security note, apply it with a couple of steps, and that will give you sort of a result on whether you should apply it right now or in which timeline you should apply it in, as well as whether you need to apply it at all, right? So all security notes are important and should be applied, because that's what's going to that's what's going to safeguard you from being attacked and losing your data tomorrow. I showed you in the beginning how easy it is to attack, and exactly how you mitigate is having a strong patching procedure in place and making sure that you apply security notes on a regular basis. Okay, so the first step when it comes to a patching process is you need to find notes. You need to find the notes that are relevant to you. Every Tuesday of the second Tuesday of the month, we release security notes from SAP, but and we've been doing this for quite some time. So you can imagine that there are a lot of notes that have piled up over time, and it's better late than never to start analyzing and looking through these notes, seeing which ones are you secure against, which ones do you still need to take some action on, right? So sometimes just applying a security note is not enough to keep you secure, because perhaps you have the correct version or the correct SP package which you're supposed to be running, but there might be some manual configuration that you have to, maybe a tiny security switch that you need to switch on, and this kind of information will be found in the note. So my point is that there is some analysis that is required. Step one here is to actually find the notes. You can do it using our support portal, which I gave you a brief introduction of how to search for notes and the advanced search option in the support portal in my last session. So one way is to use the support portal. The second one is we have a tool named System Recommendations, which comes as part of the Solution Manager line, and this will also help recommend notes for you in based upon your system. So what system recommendation does, and maybe we'll have a session specifically for system recommendations in one of the next few webinars. But for now, and if you want that, you can just let us know. But for now, just know the system recommendation essentially scans your customer landscape and matches it with notes and tells you which notes are applicable for your landscape, right? So now that's how you find your notes. When it comes to notes and applying notes, it can be of two types. One is that, and this is with regard to looking for notes. One is an ongoing project which we recommend to you to do as soon as every patch day comes about. So why do we have security notes released on the second Tuesday of every month? Because we want a dedicated day for you to look at our support portal and have all your notes readily available, so that you can invest. It's as opposed to you having to continuously invest time and keep checking the support portal, when is there a new note, when is there a new note. Instead of that, we try to group them all up and release them at one bundle, so that you can reduce the amount of operational effort that you have on your side, right? So you can have this as an ongoing project, which we highly recommend, that every month have a process that maybe on the second Tuesday of every month or the day after that, to have a look at the notes that we've newly released, because like I mentioned in the last session, you need to catch the fish as early as possible, right? You need to catch fresh fish. And so when we release the security notes, have a process in place every month to invest some time and actually look into these notes that we release and begin assessing them to see whether they are something that would be applicable for your landscape. The second one is a special project. Now this, there's a star next to it, and that is specifically for this kind of a process should only be put in place once subpoint A is already taken care of. First, when you have, see, there's a huge backlog of nodes. Say if you start a patching procedure today, you have close to 4,000 security nodes to tackle. Now, that's a huge number, and it can be daunting to sort of look at this number and think about all the effort that's going to go behind implementing these nodes. But what I tell you is that don't worry about that right now. First, set up a stable procedure for the next coming days, and then you can move on to having a special project, which maybe happens every once in a while, to look at the old notes that we have released over time and assess whether those are something that you should also be looking into. But this is with regard to finding the notes. Step two is classify the nodes. So this is exactly where Chandan's bit comes in and is really important, that you should be able to understand what does it mean to, why is a particular security node rated as a high vulnerability node, or why is something hot news, why is it medium, why is it low. For that, you need to understand how CVSS works. Um, and yeah, so that's the second point of it. Now there are a couple more points to this, and maybe I'll just show you the next point, which is really important. That is, you need to assess the implementation risks. You need to look at your landscape, your SAP landscape. That's number one. And number two is you need to look at what kind of correction does the node provide to you. Now, depending upon the correction, whether it's an ABAP correction, a non-ABAP correction, kernel, HANA, there are different implementation procedures with different implementation timeline. So you would know by now that if you are working in a role where you are implementing security nodes, you know that you use the note assistant or transaction S node to help you implement a BAP based nodes. You know that for Java you've got SPs that you might have to upgrade, and different for kernel and different for HANA. Each of them, some of them take more time than the others, and this is also something you need to um, weigh against your customer landscape to see, number one, is this node applicable? Number two, what is the priority of this node? That's step number two. And number three is, what kind of implementation risk in terms of time as well as functionality am I going to be incurring by implementing this node? Um, so it's already 11:58, so it's getting pretty late for this session. I don't want to overshoot the time, but it's good that there's interest for this, because then I will pick up from where I left off in the next session. Um, right. So I will stop this right here, and we'll share the previous content of slides with you. But probably with 2 minutes left, I'll just have a look at any open questions. Give me a second. Is there? Okay. So give me a second. So there is one question. I'm just looking into my colleague's laptop, into Bibin's laptop. So there's a question from Vikas saying that there are most of the nodes which needs the upgrade of an SAP component, which is dependent. So we need to plan the complete upgrade, which is not possible all to be done in a single month. Is it possible to do it by an SAP note correction? Okay, so yeah, so like Vikas mentioned, this is something that could be faced by a lot of you here, because what he mentions is exactly that, the implementation risk against the time. So Vikas is asking whether you can do this within a single month, and whether it's possible to do it with an SAP note correction. Um, so within probably yeah, we'll have to push it to the next session, the rest of the slides, but with that probably many of these kind of doubts might be solved. Yes, there are some nodes which are dependent on others and requires you to go into those and implement those as well. Um, is it possible to do it with an SAP note correction? I'm guessing you mean a correction instruction. I'm not sure whether you're either a correction instruction or you're talking about an SP. Um, so again, it depends upon what the dependency is. In some cases, you might have to upgrade to an SP in order to be able to consume the particular note in question. In other cases, it might just be that you have to consume some corrections from the correction instructions from the previous note in order to use this. It could be a variety of things, but I'm not entirely sure of the question here. But I can tell you that whatever you do get in the form of security notes, if you do have a regular SP upgrade cycle, you will receive those corrections anyway, right? So because those corrections will be shipped along with the SP. So if it's not that if there are 4,000 security nodes, you need to apply all the security nodes, but because many of the older nodes you might already have the corrections for, because you have a stable SP upgrade process also. So what I mean by a stable SP upgrade process is that every X number of months or weeks, you schedule for an upgrade of your SP or for the particular release that you're running. So in that case, you will get many of the old security features or the security fixes, but know that there are some cases that you will okay, that you will need to do some manual configuration, and that is something that's only mentioned in the security note, right? So Muralidharan is asking, will you please share this presentation to our mail ID? So this presentation, exactly what I'm presenting now, I will pick up where I left off in the next seminar. As for the content that's already presented, we will share those slides with you. This presentation I'm not sharing in particular is because it might confuse if I'm not if you don't also hear this recording with it, right? So okay, so share the slides with you. Okay, so for SP upgrade, downtime matters. Um, for SP upgrade, does downtime matter? Again, this is situational. In some cases, it might be. Oh,
Uh, Hi, we had some problem with our internet, so no.
Rohit, can you hear me?
yeah. Hi, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You can
Ah,
continue.
okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I think the network went down for a second. So
Yeah,
and I think it's also getting time for the end of the presentation. I got disconnected from
yeah.
Zoom. Sorry about that. But just to quickly
Mhm.
address Vikas' questions really quickly, is that SP upgrade, does it matter for downtime? It's kind of situational because depending upon which product and what does that exact SP contain, there may be maybe not complete downtime, but it may be partial. So again, probably Vikas, if you have a particular scenario, a particular note you're talking about, you can probably mail us, and I can we can always get back to you over mail, because again, it is kind of situational. So with that, it's already way past the timeline, so I will close this session. But don't worry, we'll pick, since there's so much of interest for this topic, we will pick off from where we left last time. In the meanwhile, my email address is here. Chandan also shared his email address the last time. If you have any questions, you can mail either of us. It will get to the right place. And with that, I think we don't have time for Q&A. I'm sorry. So you can just mail over the questions that you may have, right? So I think that's about it to the end of the session. Yamuna, would you like to close the session?
Yeah, sure. So thank you everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. So we have series of the same topic. We'll be sending you the invite and you can please join this session. So we'll be sharing this recording in YouTube channel and the presentation with all the attendees. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Chandan. Thank you, Rohit and Selvaraj, for the great, wonderful session. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Yamuna, and
Thank you.
thanks everybody for attending. Feel free to reach out if you
Thank you
have
all.
any
Yeah.
suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.